So my question to Muhammad Hijab is regarding this miracle of splitting the moon into two by Prophet Muhammad,
Yeah.
and there are no, there is probably no historical records to suggest that this happened, like
Yep.
not outside Arabia or something like that. And also, if this happened, the astronomical people who are in different parts of the world, they didn't. The people who used to do astronomy in fifth and sixth centuries, they also didn't talk about something like this happening.
Yeah.
So, in terms of both science observation and also in terms of historical record, uh, how to confirm that this miracle happened?
Yeah. So,
Jazakallah khair, Jim.
Jazakumullah khairan, Jim, first and foremost. So, if someone says to you, there is no evidence of something, therefore it didn't happen, this is called an argument from silence fallacy. It's fallacious reasoning. Just because there's no evidence of something, or there is currently no evidence of something, it doesn't mean that that thing didn't happen. I'll give you a great example of this. Like, for example, from what I gather from reading some of the material on basically Hebrew narratives, and especially like David alayhi salam, Dawood. So David, if you look at, for example, some of the academics, I'm trying to remember their name, like Israel Finkelstein, not Norman Finkelstein. There's a guy called Israel Finkelstein and others who were pretty against, like they were against the idea that David could have actually existed as a prophet, etc. And a lot of them had in their writings that there's no evidence of David. There's no evidence of, and then there's something called the Tel Dan stela. This stela was basically like a rock, and on it had, the house of David. So a lot of people started changing their minds on the existence of this thing called the house of David, because there was extra biblical evidence to promote this idea that there was this, Tel Dan stela, and now saying house of David and so on. So now there's extra biblical. Now they have to reassess the information and say, well, maybe there was such a thing, maybe there was such a place, but maybe it's not as it's mentioned in the Bible. They still have their reservations, but they've changed their stance.
Yeah.
So if we're saying this discovery, I don't know when it was made, by the way, maybe it was made 20 years ago, but say this discovery was made 20 years ago. If it wasn't made 30 years ago, maybe 50 years ago, people would be saying there's no evidence.
Yeah.
And if they were saying no, there's no evidence, therefore there's no extra biblical evidence of the existence of David.
Yeah.
We would say that would be an argument from silence. And the problem with arguments from silence is that all it takes is a decade or two for it to be disproven. And we know now, especially with the proliferation of like archaeological evidences, not everything has been dug up. Not everything has been codified. Yeah. Number two is that we can't expect, like, let's say, for example, this is the whole splitting of the moon phenomena. When did it happen? Let's say it happened with the Prophet ﷺ in a particular time. Let's say after Maghrib, after sunset time.
Yeah.
First of all, what was the population of the earth at that time? I would probably estimate it, Allah Alam. I mean, we don't have any strong figures on this. There was no census that was being done everywhere in the world. Like, we don't have any strong figures. But you can imagine 7th century Arabia, because like only 100 years ago, the population of the world was 1 billion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gone up sevenfold in 100 years.
Yeah, but there's also another additional assumption here,
Yeah.
and we can just undercut this argument completely, which is this miracle is a miracle because we believe the Quran is a miracle. And since we can give evidence that the Quran is the word of Allah, that it doesn't matter with anything else that it says in the Quran, whether we have whether someone thinks it meets up to a certain criteria or it doesn't. Secondly, this whole idea of, okay, there weren't people around, or we don't have evidence today. Who is to say that that is what Allah intended? This could be a miracle, as it's been explained by some scholars, that it was just for the Quraysh because it was for them. So, it is inconceivable for someone to use an argument which is conditional, which is in essence what they're saying is, it's not meeting my criteria. My criteria is there should be evidence today, and there should be evidence of independent people, some people in China who saw it when that was never the intention.
No, but hold on. There's another thing as well, right?
Yeah.
So if going back to the population numbers, if we're saying there's about 1 billion people 100 years ago, yeah, What was the population figures for 1,400 years ago? Maybe 100 million,
Yeah.
maybe 50 million.
Yeah.
Allahu Alam, it could have been anywhere from 50 million to 150 million.
Yeah.
These are just some of my like estimates here in my mind. Now, of those individuals, what was it in terms of night?
Okay, so
Nighttime.
Can you wrap this up a little bit, because we've
Yeah,
got loads of people.
in terms of nighttime, how many of those individuals would it have been night for?
Yeah.
Then you're going to eliminate another. And then how many, if it was nighttime, how many of them were awake? Then you're going to eliminate this and that. Now, the point is, if you don't accept, and how long did this last for? I mean, this lasts for a second or two.
Yeah.
Would it have been significant enough for people to record it?
Yeah.
If something happened for 1 second, if I looked into the sky and saw something,
like,
would I record that as an astronomer? There's loads of ways. It's not a great answer, but it's not a great argument. But the point I'm making is this: is that finally we have asanid, and the Prophet said in the hadith when he pointed at the qamar, the moon, he says, "Ashhidu." He says, "Bear witness to this. Bear witness to this." And the people that saw it bore witness to it. Now, here's the final part of this argument I just want to put to the people. The Quran says, "Iqtarabat as-sa'atu wa inshaqa al-qamar." That the hour has come close and the moon has been split. If this was something which was foreign to the majority of the target audience, they would have rejected that.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, you know when the Quran says...
Okay, so let's...
Should we move on?
We do, because there's loads of people... Sorry, Hijab.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so Earth...
But we'll make a video on that if it's something that's required.